Hello and good evening. Good Tuesday evening to all of you who have tuned in to tonight's episode of Real Living in Lake Forest. And if you're watching myself and my co host, Scott, who I'm going to bring in shortly, if you're watching us for the first time, welcome. If you are sharing your time with us again in tonight's episode, welcome back. So, all of that being said, let me bring my co host, Scott, into the studio.
Bill, good evening. How are you today?
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Glad to be here again. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, as I prepped our audience, those who are watching either us live stream or maybe watching us as a recording on demand where they can rewind, go forward, pause, whatever the case is. We are here together tonight to share information of value to you. And along the way, maybe, just maybe, entertain you as well. So, in tonight's episode of Real Living in Lake Forest, Scott, why don't you lead us off?
All right.
Share with us some nuggets about Lake Forest.
Okay. Well, I've been in the business for 20 years, and Lake Forest has always been a very, very interesting market. You know, what 90210 is to California, 60045 is to Illinois.
Ooh.
A lot of the same kind of demographics, the beautiful mansions there. But a little history about Lake Forest. Lake Forest actually came into being in 1854, and it was founded because of Lake Forest College.
Okay.
Which we'll talk about a little bit. 1916, Market Square, the downtown area, the historic downtown area, came into view and was created. There are a lot of famous architects that have worked in Lake Forest, such as Van Buren, Shaw. I could name a bunch of them, but the architecture in Lake Forest is unique. And what's interesting in Lake Forest is, you know, they have houses that you could buy for $274,000, and one sold in the last 12 months for over 12 million. So that's quite a spread. The average is about, or the median is about $1.6 million. So it's rather affluent neighborhood, and one of the draws is that it's one of the safest. People feel very secure and safe there. But Lake Forest has a lot to offer. Obviously, you have Lake Forest College there. You have a lot of public and private education opportunities there. The Lake Forest Academy, Lake Forest High School. And you also are right there at the lake. So there's beach access. There's a great beach, which I've been to many times. And beautiful beach. You do have to have a resident sticker to get there. Even non-residents can go there for $25 a day. So you have beach access. You have a lot of other beaches nearby in Island Park.
Yeah.
But Lake Forest was kind of the midpoint between Milwaukee and Chicago. And it's 30 miles north of Chicago. It's just a train ride away. So if you work in downtown Chicago and you can commute easily from Lake Forest, they have a train station right there in Market Square, and it's very convenient, but it's just a beautiful area. One fact that I discovered, there are over 800 acres of open space.
Wow.
800 acres of nature preserve, parks with trails that people can walk on. Obviously, it's very green all over the place, but that's quite an interesting number. And Lake Forest expanded. It used to be East Lake Forest, which we now call very East Lake Forest. Then you have East Lake Forest. And then several years later, West Lake Forest was annexed in to Lake Forest. It's a rather small community, but it's got a lot of commercial business there. You have AbbVie, you have Pfizer. They just have a new hotel, the Forester. They just opened up about a year ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. Um, the market is interesting. You know, before the pandemic, there were over 200, probably over 225 single family homes available.
Mm-hmm.
Today, as of today, there are only 59.
59?
There
Wow.
are 59 single family homes available. And get this,
Okay.
75 have sold or gone under contract in the last 30 days.
Oh my gosh.
So that's under 1 month of inventory. You know, a lot of people are moving out of Chicago, especially during the pandemic. They wanted more space, and
Right.
obviously Lake Forest has many larger homes, so there was a massive influx from downtown, and the market's very tight there. There's low inventory, but it's a very desirable location, and hope there's not much room to build. Although they do, tear down the old ones and put up the new ones, but
Gotcha.
in,
Yeah.
in some incredible properties in Lake Forest, it's just gorgeous. Um,
From what I think I know, I would assume a lot of corporate execs that work at the pharma companies, a lot of execs who run businesses that in downtown Chicago probably live in Lake Forest, right?
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Uh, uh, you know, obviously, if you're making six figures, seven figures, it's the place to be.
Yeah, not to mention probably the Chicago Bears personnel, I would assume.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And you had Mr. T there for a while, and I think Tom Waddle just sold his house in Lake Forest,
Did
so
he? Okay.
there's one more available.
There you go. One more available for the next bear.
One more available. And we were talking about, you and I were talking about investment opportunities, and with Lake Forest College there, obviously it's one of the oldest liberal arts colleges. It's ranked number 85 in the country, so it's
Okay.
very desirable. It's very small and manageable,
Right.
and they have dorms there, but if somebody wants to go off campus and get a couple friends together, it might even make sense. There are some condos available. In fact, another funny number is there are only 6 attached single family homes available today.
Oh wow, really?
But there are a few, and they range anywhere from 200,000 on up.
There you go. There you go.
Those are pretty affordable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great area. There are a lot of events that people go to Lake Forest for. Concerts in the square in Market
Mhm.
Square. Market Square is a nice, really, um, it's a nice little downtown area. Has a lot of shops, restaurants, very, very quaint. They have the cocoa crawl there in the winter. They've had, of course, the Christmas tree lighting there. The art fair, which
Okay.
is coming, Lake Forest Art Fair, September 3rd through the 4th.
Nice.
And they also have Lake Forest Days, August 1st.
Okay.
So there's a lot of community involvement there. A lot of events, a lot of other events, sporting events there. I know I've been to car shows there, old
I
car shows they have, and
I can imagine some nice cars.
yeah, really nice cars. And so lots to do in Lake Forest, inside and outside. You got the Gordon Center.
Okay.
My wife and I have been to plays there at the Gordon Center, and that's the community house there. So a lot happening there as well. I think that's it. I went over the beaches, Forest Park Beach, um, Market Square, everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Lake Forest is just a great area, and anybody who has an inkling, I'd love to be able to show them around Lake Forest, show them some of the homes that are available. And
Right.
as I always say, timing is everything in real estate. So
It
if
is.
you want to move to Lake Forest, uh, contact me immediately, and we'll start the search.
And it sounds like with 800, I heard you share with us 800 acres of open green space, how appropriate for its name, Lake Forest.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
They
as
also
you
they
heard,
also have the Bears training camp up there.
oh yes, that's right. So
Yeah,
there you go. You can do some celebrity sightings
right.
uh, if you live there as
Yeah.
a property owner or resident.
And a few years ago, they had the PGA tournament there.
Yes, correct,
So
correct.
it's a very diverse group of people.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. You know, the sports of golf and I know pickleball that you're pretty involved with, and probably, you know, the sport of owning cars. You know, it's the sports and hobbies of the typical Lake Forest resident and property owner. And so earlier you mentioned, Scott, you know, does it make sense to invest, buy an investment property in Lake Forest? Well, maybe. Why? Because if perhaps for some of you who are watching us tonight, you plan to have a son or daughter going to Lake Forest College, and maybe in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, I don't want my son or daughter to just live in college housing. You could certainly buy, acquire, and invest in one of these condos. That certainly sounds like, with that kind of tight inventory, it certainly sounds like it will appreciate in value, you know, during the 4 years, 6 years, et cetera, et cetera. And when your son and daughter finishes college, you could still hang on to the property and rent it out to the next round of you know, college students at Lake Forest College. What do you think about that idea?
I don't think you would ever lose money on something like that. It's definitely an appreciating asset. There are very limited ones, but
Right.
they are trying to build more though. I've seen a lot downtown. A
Have
lot
you?
of new condos go up,
There you go.
but
Yeah. And if they've got the
you have to
space,
plan ahead. You
yeah.
have to plan
And
ahead.
if they've got the space and probably the blessing from the municipality in terms of zoning and so forth, it's just maybe a matter of time.
Right.
Yeah, maybe just a matter of time. Let's now, Scott, move to the next part of our conversation. This is where I'm going to put you on the spot, put you in the hot seat, because I know you work with a lot of sellers in Chicago metro area, the north suburbs, North Shore, northwest suburbs. When you are working with a seller, Scott, what are some of the things that you really keep your eye on the prize with in terms of choosing the right buyer and the right offer? What's important to you and your seller client? Can you speak to that?
Hmm. Well, these days when you're in that situation where you have a buyer and he's coming in, um, a lot of times today, if the house is presented right and priced right, uh, the price will go above list.
Yeah,
So then it's a question of, okay, well, which one is the best offer to accept?
right.
Obviously, cash is king.
Of
And
course.
you have a cash offer with proof of funds, then that's golden.
Right.
Um, beyond that though, there are a lot of people that don't have cash, and then a pre-approval letter and a verification that the buyer is qualified is key.
Yeah.
Um, you're going to have a lot of people that come in once it goes above list. They're going to waive some contingencies. Um, I, I I don't think anybody should waive an inspection uh, contingency, but to have a property go as is, where we as the seller is not nickel and dime on every little thing, I think is important. You
Right.
know, if it's a new roof that's needed, then factor that into the price up front.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
because there's a lot of people waiting in line. If one deal falls through, then there's always the next one.
Yeah.
And I know that a good friend of mine actually just bought a house in Conway Farms there in Lake Forest, and he got it before it even went on the market.
Oh, wow.
It was in a private listing network,
Okay.
and at that point, you basically pay what somebody's asking.
Yeah.
And he
Just
did.
so,
It's a beautiful home,
right.
but you've got to be willing and able to pull the trigger.
True.
There's none of this. Well, I'm going to go home and think about it for a while.
True.
'Cause
True.
that doesn't work in today's market.
No, it doesn't. Especially if a property may be held for a short window of time in the private network. Usually it's to give, my guess is to give the sellers maybe some extra time to tidy things around the house, et cetera, et cetera. You're absolutely right. Timing is everything. You've got to be able to pull the trigger. You got to come in strong, no nonsense. Makes perfect sense. Um,
You
what
know,
other
one thing,
things?
Bill, one thing, Bill, is that price is the most important thing.
True.
It's not always the only thing.
Right.
A seller might feel more comfortable with a buyer. Sometimes buyers write letters,
Oh, I've
and
heard that.
I know my brother sold his house in New Jersey, and
Okay.
it was partially because of a letter that somebody from Philadelphia was moving out there, and they wrote a real tear-jerking letter, and I think that won them the offer. But some sellers don't want the letter,
Yeah.
and there are those that price is the only thing. There's escalation clauses and appraisal waivers that can be part of an offer, but
Yeah.
some sellers don't want all of that. They just
Yeah.
want a strong offer and a good buyer. And some get emotional about it. If you've lived in the house for 20, 30 years or so, they want it to go to a good person or a good family.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm sure. My suspicion is, as I'm listening to a lot of the facts and the data that you shared with me, not to mention, as I vividly remember, several times I've driven through Lake Forest, not because I just happen to want to drive through there. It's usually because of visiting some friends close by, leaving a Ravinia concert or some event. Um, my suspicion is a lot of those properties, even though they may be built as is, they're probably in pretty decent shape.
Yeah.
Right?
I was in a property last week. Actually, that's pretty interesting. I was in a property last week that sold, I think, for 3.7 million. And the person came in a year ago,
Okay.
was going to do all these things. They imported all this tile and everything, and they ripped out the kitchen, and then their company was bought out.
Wow. Got
So
it.
they were selling it again. The kitchen was not there,
Right.
but hopefully they were going to finish it. But it was on the market for I believe it was like 4.9 million, and it was
Wow.
a beautiful house with
I
a
bet.
swimming pool in the back and grounds and everything. Just fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. It is definitely the epitome of the North Shore of Chicago, where we imagine it in movies and pictures and that kind of stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
So, as we wrap up tonight's episode, for all of you watching us tonight, should you need the help, the services of Scott to help you sell your property in Lake Forest, near Lake Forest, or other parts of Chicago Metro, quick way to engage him in a conversation, because I know he's ready, capable, and willing to help you with your next chapter. All you have to do is scan the QR code that you see next to his picture, his name, and along the way, should you need help with financing your real estate purchase, whether it be in Lake Forest, around Lake Forest, or thereabouts, you can also start a conversation with me by scanning the QR code that you see here as well. So, Scott, as we wrap up tonight's conversation about Lake Forest. 800 acres of green open space. I love that. I have this visual right now in front of me. I want to thank you for your time tonight as my co-host in this episode. And for all of you watching, look forward to hearing from us, seeing us again in the next episode. Let's say a goodbye to everyone, Scott.
Thank you, Bill, for having me. And if any of you even want to drive through Lake Forest, it's a treat.
It is.
So thanks for everything, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Good night, everyone.